I'm cutting in here at the top of the episode to announce that we have cleared 100 episodes of Occult Confessions. To mark that milestone, I have invited the alchemical actors to share some of their experiences behind the scenes, some favorite memories from the last 3+ years of creating the show with all of you. There's a lot that I enjoy about creating the show. I certainly enjoy the research and the writing. But the real joy for me comes with sharing that work and having the conversation with my actors and sharing that conversation and the connections I've been able to have with all of you. We are at 100 episodes because of you. We would not have kept going if nobody was listening. But our community out there has connected with the show. You've shared your suggestions and ideas. You've shared the show with your friends and neighbors. You've become our patrons. You've sustained us. You've kept us going at this work. And I am so very grateful for that. It's been a real pleasure connecting with all of you out there. I've gotten to know folks across the globe, sharing stories and connecting on topics and just sharing a passion for these ideas and exploring these ideas with like-minded people. And that is truly the reason we keep at this. So thank you for bringing us to 100 episodes here of Occult Confessions. Let's get into it.
Occult Confessions is brought to you commercial-free through the generous support of our patrons. Visit occultconfessions.com and click on Donate to help keep the history of the occult on the digital airwaves.
Robert E. Howard's The Shadow Kingdom sits at the nexus of two realms of occult lore, the canon revolving around an Atlantean root race established by Helena Blavatsky in her Secret Doctrine in the late 1880s, and the reptilian conspiracy theory most closely identified with former sportscaster David Icke. The Shadow Kingdom tells the story of Atlantean warrior turned Valusian king Kull. The ambassador Ka-Nu reveals a secret plot of shape-shifting serpent men hiding in Kull's own palace, and the blunt warrior king swings into action in opposition to the conspiracy, which in turn swings into action against him, all coming to a terrible climax in the cursed chamber of a king murdered 1,000 years before. The Shadow Kingdom is a work of fiction. In fact, it is arguably the earliest example of the sword and sorcery fantasy genre most popularly associated with Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. But the Shadow Kingdom both drew on and introduced elements into occult and conspiracy lore that have been accepted by believers as absolute truth. It truly does skirt that line between truth and fiction, or at least truths people are willing to believe. For the second time in a row, I am joined by the Literal Sisters, Olivia, our Grandmaster of the Order.
Hello. Hi.
Hello, hi. You're feeling better today.
I am. I'm feeling a little bit off in general today. Just having one of those days, but beyond that.
But that's par for the course for you.
Okay.
It's like every other day, isn't it?
Wow.
That seems
all right. That took a turn.
Like a slight, there's some sass, some spice coming off from your mic. It's fine.
Some spice coming off of the mic.
Yeah. Some zest, if you will. A
Little
mild
lemon
spice.
zest.
Yeah.
Bree, how are you doing?
I'm good, Rob. I am zestful today.
You are also zestful.
Yeah.
We've got two zests, and we're trying to zest Olivia.
Well, I don't like that.
It occurred to me that we are back at it again, Brianna.
Oh, Literal Sisters. Back at it again.
Yeah, we didn't do that last episode we were on together.
Maybe it's because we were a little off in the beginning.
Yes. I apologize for my head injury.
To the entire podcastosphere.
Well, apparently you said I sounded like I was at a funeral and then a happy funeral or something.
At the very beginning, yeah, just when you said hello and then plug. Well, you got your chance to make it up today.
Yeah.
Let's pledge it out first. We, the members of the Secret Order of Alchemical Actors, do solemnly commit ourselves to a full and honest telling of the history of the occult as far as we know it.
everyone. I'm Savannah Barrett, otherwise known as the Sister of the 84th Degree, and I'm here to celebrate OC's 100th episode.
Hey all, Mims here. One of the voice boys as we're called.
Hello, my name is Aubrey Radford, and I am Occult Confessions Werewolf in Residence.
Hello, my name is Sean Priest, and you guys might know me as the voice of the Kings from Occult Confessions.
I remember when we first started, I was so excited, and we all actually thought that it would be a good idea to record the entire first season in one day, in one tiny room in Chesapeake's library. And just to remind you, I believe the first episode was the first season was 6 episodes, so basically a 6-hour-long day. And it was a really long day. And then after we recorded all 6 of those episodes, they didn't sound good. So then we got a new microphone and re-recorded all of them in our theater instead.
So when COVID started last year, I was in a mighty bad place mentally, without a whole lot of a creative outlet at the time, and a whole lot of personal issues going on. But being able to hop in and help out with this gave me something to look forward to, and helped me make it through a time where I wasn't able to make music and I wasn't having a whole lot of luck booking any voiceover stuff.
Okay, so one of my favorite memories associated with the podcast would probably be the impromptu Occult Confessions t-shirt photo shoot.
I don't particularly have one moment, but it's more or less the bunch of sessions that we were able to do during quarantine, where we would just hop on a Zoom call or something similar, and or Discord, and just be able to do these lines and be able to help out each other through all of this. It's definitely kind of inspired me to want to take and pursue voice directing more seriously.
And then, after we re-recorded those, posted them for a couple months, we decided we still didn't like them, and then Rob went back, rewrote those episodes, and then we re-recorded them again. There was a lot of trials and errors when we were getting used to making a podcast, but at the end of the day, I'm really proud of all the hard work that's been put in, and I'm so happy that we actually have awesome confessors that listen to us and seem to actually enjoy listening to us, so that's awesome. Thank you, guys.
Jacob had to deal with me and James, where, James is just goofy, and once you put a camera in front of me, I don't know how to act. So Jacob's face tells all.
I remember doing the episode of The Night of the Cart, and I remember sitting down with Brandon and talking about the lines, different type of lines we're going to have to do, and how I was going to be the one that was going to be the goblin and also the king at the time.
As a side note, Rob might put this in, he might not, but there's always something really special about recording any of the lines, but especially that first batch that we were able to do not too long before quarantine started, when we were able to still record in person.
It has been such an honor and a privilege to be able to do voice work with these guys, and they are some of my closest and dearest friends, and if you guys are listening to this, thank you so much.
Happy 100th episodes of Occult Confessions.
All right, let's get started with Robert E. Howard. So Robert Irvin Howard was born on the 22nd of January, 1906 in P. Astor, Texas. If you're from P. Astor and I'm pronouncing that wrong, that makes me sad, but you can let me know. Or if you're from around P. Astor or Peaster.
I really need it to just be P. Astor. I can't be anything else now.
Peaster sounds not as good at all. It's got to be P. Astor sounds like a place. Peaster sounds like a disease or something, a disorder. What's going on with you? I got the Peaster. So anyway, Dr. Isaac Howard was his dad, and Hester Irvin Howard was mom. There's a name you don't hear anymore, Hester. His father was a traveling physician, and the family moved around the state of Texas to a variety of oil boom towns throughout his youth. So chasing that gusher.
Ew.
Howard's childhood was...
Yeah,
what?
I didn't
That
like
sounded
that either,
bad,
but-
Rob.
That's what they call an oil
A
well.
gusher?
Yeah, gushes.
Really?
Chasing
That's
that
the truth.
gusher? That sounds bad.
Yeah. Oh, look it up later.
Okay.
I'm not going to look that
I
up.
won't either.
But thank you.
On second thought, yeah, maybe you shouldn't Google that. So, Howard's childhood, what was I talking about? Howard's childhood, which was marked with uncertainty, because he's going from town to town, chasing oil, black gold, Dr. Howard invested in a series of get-rich-quick schemes that kept the family in perpetual financial distress, and his mother contracted tuberculosis while nursing sick relatives. Hester then committed herself to her son's intellectual development, so she survives tuberculosis.
Oh, sick.
Woo.
Hooray. Yeah, I mean, at that time in history, that's pretty good, because World War II is when we really got our penicillin together. Mother and son had a close relationship, and her interest in Howard's writing pushed him to begin seeking publishers for his stories at the tender age of 15. While working to establish his career and piling up rejections from the pulp magazines, he worked as a journalist, also spent some time with the post office, and took a series of stenography jobs.
He's busy at 15.
Well, you know, mom's pushing him.
I guess the life expectancy wasn't
Plans to
fantastic.
Well, we'll get to Howard's life expectancy in a minute.
Oh, okay.
Howard sold his first story, a caveman tale called Spear and Fang, to Weird Tales for $16 in 1924 when he was just 18 years old.
Oh, yeah.
For those of you who aren't Lovecraft people, I guess you are now because you listened to our Necronomicon episode, but Weird Tales is the magazine that is most closely associated with Lovecraft short stories. In 1927, he sold The Shadow Kingdom to Weird Tales, this time for the much heftier sum of $100.
That's an upgrade.
That is an upgrade. From 16 to 100? Yeah.
That's pretty good back then, too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, that's some cash right there. In addition to his weird horror and fantasy stories, Howard was writing boxing fiction. Not fiction about putting things in boxes, but people hitting each other in the face with gloves.
He's getting into the sports genre. I appreciate it.
Oh, you like the sports genre?
No. I don't appreciate the sports genre so much as I appreciate him broadening his horizons.
Okay.
Yes.
He published in the magazines Fight Story and Sports Story magazine. So we have to bear in mind what a weird time this was in history. There are entire magazines devoted to fictional stories about sports.
Wild.
It's sports fan fiction. It's fine.
Sport. Go sports. I like boxing, though. I do like boxing. But
it's like if you really enjoy reading, but also sports. And yeah, apparently fan fiction. So although he was earning a living on his writing, unfortunately the market collapsed with the Great Depression and he lost his savings, so that $100 came and went. When not one, but two of the banks he'd placed his money in collapsed. Imagine that. So speak about diversifying, right? He was in two different banks. Oy. He became a member of H.P. Lovecraft's pulp literary letter-writing circle when Weird Tales forwarded a letter he'd wrote to them praising Lovecraft's The Rats in the Walls. So in other words, Howard wrote a letter to Weird Tales saying, "Yay, that Lovecraft story about rats in walls, man, that really got me." And they just sent it to Lovecraft, and Lovecraft was like, you're that guy that writes about boxing.
Oh.
I thought you meant that they sent his letter back to him.
I don't know, they forwarded it to Lovecraft.
Okay.
Lovecraft called him Two Gun Bob.
Why? Why did he call him Two Gun Bob?
Why Bob?
It's not like because his name is Robert.
Oh, right.
But the two gun part is because of his affection for masculine culture and because of his home state, Texas.
Oh, like the guns, the muscles.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's kind of incredible.
Well, if you compare him to Lovecraft, not that Lovecraft is at all effeminate in his writing, what with, giant monsters devouring people and stuff, but...
Sounds pretty feminine to me. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I meant that in the most positive way possible, just to clarify.
There's no need to clarify. I was with you right away.
Thank you.
In March of 1932, Mr. Howard created his most famous and enduring character, Conan the Cimmerian.
Oh.
You probably know him as Conan the Barbarian.
What is it with the Cimmerians?
What do you mean? Where else have you heard about Cimmerians? Do we talk about... Oh, not Sumerian.
No,
this is Cimmerian.
Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah,
I said...
That's good. Yeah.
No.
So it's not an actual
Wait, what is
ancient culture.
Cimmerian, then?
It's a fake ancient culture.
Oh.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I didn't get it either.
I thought it was a real term. Got it.
And I've added a note here just so we know that Conan the Barbarian was famously portrayed by, do you guys know?
No, but I remember the show.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Huh.
1982 was when Conan the Barbarian came out.
They must have done... Did they do like a remake or something? Or in the 90s or something?
You're probably right,
I
yeah.
think they did.
Because it was that really, like, ridiculous show. I think. But I don't know. Maybe it's the same. I don't know.
Maybe you're thinking of Xena Warrior Princess.
Oh, no. I used to watch that with my mom, like, way before Brie was born. Oh, my God.
Kevin Sorbo is Hercules.
My mom was obsessed with that show. Oh, my God. She dressed up as her one year. Brianne, I don't know if you ever saw that.
Yeah.
We used to have these Halloween parties at the karate school, and yeah, she dressed up one time. It was pretty badass, not gonna lie.
Nice.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the plot of the movie Conan the Barbarian incorporated the Howard character Thulsa Doom, played by James Earl Jones, as the master of a snake cult. Both Thulsa Doom, and the beauty of fictional characters is I can pronounce these any way I want. Thulsa Doom and the Snake Cult were borrowed from Howard's King Kull stories, but had nothing to do with each other, appearing in completely different tales. Or Conan. So in other words, it's sort of like a Cole Porter musical today. Like they just took a bunch of like pieces of all the different musicals. This is very nerdy. And put them together into one musical. They took his best songs and stuck them together. This is sort of what they did with Conan, is they just took elements from different Howard stories and pulled them together into one movie. And the Snake Cult was one of those. So Howard wrote the Conan and Kull stories in the fictional Hyborian Age, a mythical time before recorded history that is fictional. So he gave up writing the Conan stories in 1935, in part because Weird Tales didn't pay him in a timely fashion. Yeah, that's rough. And in part because he wanted to create a new set of stories set in his beloved American Southwest. He began writing westerns. But his suicide put an abrupt end to this second phase of his career.
Oh, shit.
A little foreshadowing there. Hold that thought. His only real romantic relationship was with Noveline Price, an aspiring writer. They dated for 2 years in the mid-1930s until Howard's responsibility to look after his sick mother so consumed him that he didn't have time for Price, and she went on to date one of his best friends, Truett Vinson.
Ooh. Ouch.
That stinks.
Wait,
yeah.
did you say her name was Noveline?
Noveline.
So, and she wanted to be a writer, and her name is literally like novel. Is that?
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Love that.
Howard had an intense and ultimately tragic relationship with his mother, for those of you who haven't picked that up yet.
Yeah.
When she slipped into a coma in June 1936, he borrowed a .38 Colt automatic from his friend Lindsay Tyson, and on June the 11th, while keeping vigil over his mother, he asked a nurse if she would ever regain consciousness. When the nurse said no, he went out to his car, parked in the driveway, and shot himself.
Jesus, okay.
8 hours later, he was dead, and the next day, his mother died. They had a joint funeral and were buried in the family plot he'd bought the day before.
Oh my god.
That's crazy.
Isn't that an incredible story?
Wow. Okay.
Very odd relationship with mom.
You could say that.
Oh my
Yeah. Yeah. So they must have been extremely close when he was starting his career, like when we're talking about the teenage years. It's so much so that it prevented him from forming, a mature sexual relationship with a woman, and then this suicide. Conan the Barbarian and Howard's fame stems from the paperback publication of the Conan stories in 1965, the same period as the paperback publication of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and the start of a fantasy boom. We always think about Lord of the Rings, especially now with the movies and all, but Conan the Barbarian was really first to the punch, and Conan was right there in 65 when this was all becoming big, but Howard was long dead. He couldn't enjoy it. Lion Sprague de Camp
Whoa, okay.
was the editor. That is the editor of the Conan series. Lionsprog de Camp had no compunction about reordering the stories into an imposed chronology, inserting some of his own stories to close the gap, and even rewriting some of Howard's stories. Howard had focused on the theme of liberty, but de Camp shifted the focus to the Cimmerians' manifest destiny, both very American themes. Howard was labeled a literary hack taken to psychosis, but in the 1970s, after de Camp's death, the stories were revived and re-edited into a definitive edition consummate with Howard's original, which I suppose you could buy now if you get interested in this after this episode.
Well, that's good at least.
All right, let's get into the story. I don't know if this is going to make everyone want to go out and buy some Howard or the opposite. So, talk about the Shadow Kingdom. The Shadow Kingdom remains one of Howard's most enduring stories, even though his claim to fame really is Conan and the sword and sorcery genre. The protagonist is Kull, king of Valusia and former warrior of Atlantis.
Oh.
Kull is considered to be the prototype for Howard's more famous Conan. The Atlanteans, who are one of several barbarian tribes, including the Picts, P-I-C-T-S, the Picts in Howard's fictional universe. They turned their back on Kull when he went out into the world to seek his fortune. Atlantis and Pict are the barbarian lands as opposed to the 7 kingdoms, one of which Kull now rules. As I say all these things, you'll start to think of all sorts of stuff, like Game of Thrones, and it just calls to mind all these things. But Howard was coming up with this universe long before, it became cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how many kingdoms are there in Game of Thrones?
I think it's 7.
I was going to say
Is it 7?
or
It's
8
exactly the
or
same.
I think it's 7, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So, an unnamed emissary, let's get into the story of Kull. An unnamed emissary, or diplomat, arrives in Kull's court to invite him to meet with the ambassador Ka-Nu. Kull recognizes this emissary as a Pict, a rival tribe of the Atlanteans, but in his capacity as king of Valusia, he knows he must put these old rivalries behind him, like when you go to college with a kid who went to your rival high school and you're both in the chorus of Annie, Get Your Gun. It's exactly like that. A lot of musicals in today's episode.
Yeah.
The ambassador Ka-Nu requests through his Pictish emissary that Kull attend the night's festivities alone. So there's going to be some festivities that the king can attend in the Pictish court, Pictish tent. It's not really a court.
It's a tent?
There's like, they're like camped outside the city.
But he has to go alone?
Kull is afraid of nothing whatsoever because he's super buff and also good with a sword. Right? What is there to fear if you're super buff and good with a sword?
Nothing.
And he decides it would be perfectly fine for him to just go alone to this shady ambassador's party.
Oh.
Who needs guards? Who needs...
Oh, he just decides to go alone.
Yeah, he's buff.
Got it.
After Kull arrives, nothing bad happens to buff people.
Okay.
So wait, does nothing happen?
Well, I won't give it away.
Oh, I thought
After
that was
Kull
it.
arrives, he's just arriving at the party.
Okay.
Stay with me. Ka-Nu clears the room and begins to spill a whole lot of secrets. So he's just like, okay, everybody get out. I'm going to tell secrets to my buddy the king here while y'all are gone. Okay. A whole lot of secrets, but at the same time, he's not spilling any secrets whatsoever. Oh. He tells Kull that a peace is coming to the land. Tomorrow, he will send a helper to Kull, a man named Brule, who will bear a certain piece of dragon jewelry so that Kull can identify him from all the other strangers who show up to offer him help. Because I assume that's happening all the time.
The night can hear. There are worlds within worlds. But you may trust me and you may trust Brule, the Spear Slayer. Look, examine it closely. Brule will wear it on his arm when he comes to you tomorrow night so that you may know him. Trust Brule as you trust yourself, and do what he tells you to. And in proof of trust, look ye.
The stolen gem. The green jewel from the temple of the serpent. Valka!
To earn Kull's trust, Ka-Nu reveals a secret about himself as a kind of collateral. The ambassador is in possession of a great jewel stolen from the Temple of the Serpent. This, now it's sounding like a Nickelodeon game show.
I was thinking,
Yeah,
Hidden Temple.
Hidden Temple.
Hidden Temple,
I was
yeah.
thinking it's like some Indiana Jones shit.
Oh, yeah. This is apparently a thing you definitely don't want to do. You do not want to steal the Great Jewel from the Temple of the Serpent. If ever you find yourself in a Robert E. Howard fictional universe and someone says, hey, you want to steal this jewel from this Serpent Temple? Say no. I don't want to do that. Even if you're an important man like the Ambassador Kanu. So even he can't get away with this. And if anyone found out that Kanu had this jewel, they would probably kill him and everyone he knows. So, Kull decides that it's okay to trust this guy. So this guy's like, hey, look, I have this deadly jewel, this jewel that people would kill me if they knew I had. And Kull's like, hey, you're okay.
What?
You're an okay guy. Basically because if Kull told anyone, right, they would just kill this guy.
Wait, so which one's the buff one again?
Kull is buff.
Okay,
Kanu
Kull is buff. Okay.
Kanu's like he's a big guy. He's like an emperor. He's like a Roman emperor kind of character.
They're
like,
making
indulgent,
a Survivor alliance. He's like, hey, I have the hidden
my God,
immunity
Olivia.
idol, and I'm showing you. That's exactly people out
I
there that
know
watch.
that's exactly what it is, but
Maybe this is required reading before you do Survivor.
Oh.
Anyway, so Kull decides it's okay to trust him, and whoever pops by with the dragon armband the next day is also going to be okay for him to trust.
What?
So
Okay.
he's buff and he has a sword. He's not known for his, discerning wit. So when Armband Man arrives through the window, he is none other than the nameless Pictish emissary who had invited Kull to the ambassador's party the day before. So remember there was that guy who came, he was like, come out and hang out out here.
he came through a window?
Yeah, they're always jumping through windows.
Okay.
They're buff. That's what
I
buff
guess.
people do.
They're just parkouring. They're just trying to show off their buffness
Yes, I've never
at
been
every turn.
buff. I don't have the frame to be buff, so I only enter through doors.
I mean, I'm
but,
assuming there's no glass on these windows, right?
That's a lot less impressive if there isn't.
I mean, they're not shattering as they...
Like
Well,
every single
then-
time, they're not.
What am I here for? There's just a man who comes in, replaces the sheet of glass behind the scene, like while they're
Constantly.
having the conversation.
Constantly servants coming and going with panes of glass. So this is Brule, who just came through the window with the dragon armband. And Brule reveals a secret passage in Kull's kingly chamber that even Kull didn't know about, and leads Kull down through the passage where they discover all 18 of Kull's Red Slayer guards sleeping in a pile.
That's a lot.
Are they sleeping? Because that doesn't sound like
They might be dead.
sleeping.
Yeah, the Red Slayers are sort of like the Secret Service.
Oh.
So Kull is super annoyed at this. What are all these guys doing sleeping on the job? So they go and check in front of Kull's kingly chamber door, and lo and behold, there are 18 guards on duty.
Okay,
But oh yeah.
the concern that he says is not, what is this secret passage under my throne room? How did you know about this secret passage? It's like, why y'all slacking? Like, what? What's...
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff being kept from the king, that's for sure. But now people have doppelgangers. He had 18 guards.
Yeah.
They're all passed out behind the throne, but they're also on duty. What the hell is going on? How can they be in two places at once?
Nay, those are the same men. In Volka's name, this is sorcery. This is insanity. I saw with my own eyes the bodies of those men not 8 minutes agone. Yet there they stand.
Kull, what know ye of the traditions of this race ye rule?
Much, and yet little. Valusia is so old.
Aye, we are but barbarians, infants compared to the 7 empires. Not even they themselves know how old they are. Neither the memory of man nor the annals of historians reach back far enough to tell us when the first man came up from the sea and built cities on the shore. But Kull, men were not always ruled by men.
Kull and Brule hear something stirring in the corridor and quickly hide behind a tapestry like Hamlet or Carole King.
Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, it's
Or Scooby-Doo. Yes.
Our class levels are very different, Rob, apparently.
Yeah.
I've got Hamlet and Carole King. You have Scooby-Doo.
Yes.
Tu, who is the king's chief counselor, his name is Tu, French for you, enters with a blade drawn to kill the king. So his chief counselor comes in ready to stab him.
That sucks.
Kull is enraged, and he leaps from behind the tapestry and drives his sword into Tu's spine, killing him.
Oh.
Then things start to get weird.
They're not weird yet.
Yeah. What?
Okay.
Kroll leaned above him, teeth bared in the killer's snarl. Heavy brows a scowl above eyes that were like the gray ice of the cold sea. Then he realized the hilt and recoiled. Shaken, dizzy, the hand of death at his spine. For as he watched, Tu's face became strangely dim and unreal. The features mingled and merged in a seemingly impossible manner. Then, like a fading mask of fog, the face suddenly vanished, and in its stead, gaped and leered a monstrous serpent's head. "Valka!" gasped Kull, sweat beading in his forehead. And again, "Valka!"
A man with the head of a snake! This, then, is a priest of the serpent god?
Aye, Tu sleeps unknowing. These fiends can take any form they will. That is, they can buy magic charm or the like, fling a web of sorcery about their faces, as an actor dons a mask, so that they resemble anyone they wish to.
Hot.
And their curse is Valka. He says, Valka. Like, oh shit. Valka. Man. Brul goes to dispose of the body, and when he returns, suddenly becomes a giant jerk and attempts to murder Kull.
Damn.
His dragon friend. He left and he came back, and now he's a murdering asshole.
Is he a reptilian?
Ah, I thought you were my friend, Brul. Luckily, Kull is super buff and good with a sword. Have I mentioned that? And he has cat-like reflexes, so he stabs Brul, killing him, and Brul's own face fades and transforms into that of yet another snake priest.
Yeah.
I gotta say, props to Howard here. This is a pretty shocking narrative moment, because, Brul was our only friend for a while here, and he showed us all these secrets, and he showed us the snake people, so, wow.
Yeah, the drama.
It's a lot.
But But Howard's not done turning the screw here.
okay.
The shock doesn't last, because the snake Brul isn't wearing the dragon armlet.
What?
The dragon armlet, Bree, is a sign that you can trust him.
Okay, I understand now.
So Brul was not actually a snake person. Somebody had assumed the form of Brul
Oh my.
to try to kill
Oh
Kull. Yeah, this is
Yeah,
wild. This is like
okay.
Mission Impossible.
Holy
I'm on it
shit.
now, Rob.
Oh my
I got
god.
it.
Okay.
Another imposter attempting to fool the king and assassinate him. And Brul returns, wearing his armlet. And he explains all of this to us, the reader.
Oh, all right. That's how.
Okay.
So the armlet is something a snake priest actually cannot wear, because the dragon or winged dinosaur, which is apparently another name for dragon in the Howard universe.
That checks out. The 20.
The dragon was actually, fun fact, an ancient enemy of the snake people.
Would you look at that?
Yeah.
Comes full circle.
So they would never wear the dragon armband. And there's another trick to tell whether or not someone is a snake person. Because of the shape of their jaws, they cannot speak the phrase Kanama ka lajerama. I can't speak it. I can do this. Which? I'm not a snake person. Kanama ka lajerama. You guys try it.
Lajerama.
There you go. Can you do it, Olivia?
Say it again.
Kanama ka lajerama.
Namaka Lodge something. No.
Lajerama.
I did it.
Okay, there you go. That's proof that none of us are snake people.
Whoa.
The meaning, because they can't say that. So if you just try to get somebody to say it and they refuse, they're a snake person. Now you know. The meaning of the phrase is lost to time. So don't ask what it means. I really do love Howard's writing. But its secret power to distinguish snake men from real men remains. So the only purpose of speaking those words is to determine who is and is not a snake person.
But
We'll put them on the website in case you need them.
okay.
Then Howard gets poetic as Kull glimpses the ancient past through his mind's eye.
He stopped short, staring for suddenly the silent swinging wide of a mystic door. Misty, unfathomed reaches opened in the recesses of his consciousness, and for an instant he seemed to gaze back through the vastness, that spanned life and life, seeing through the vague and ghostly fogs dim shapes, reliving dead creatures, men in combat with hideous monsters, vanquishing a planet of frightful terrors. Against a gray, ever-shifting background moved strange nightmare forms, fantasies of lunacy and fear, and man, the jest of the gods, the blind, wisdomless striver from dust to dust, following the long, bloody trail of his destiny, knowing not why, bestial, blundering, like a great murderous child, yet somewhere a spark of divine fire.
The snake people, like the harpies and wolf people and bat people, were all part of an ancient race. These other groups were extinguished by humans, except that the snake people, and a few wolfmen, but enough to put Lon Chaney in business, have survived. They return periodically whenever humankind forgets about them. Their current incarnation in the story is as priests of the serpent god, and they have fooled all of humanity into worshipping the serpent. So, in hindsight, it's kind of ethically okay to steal their jewels, but still, you'll get cut. There's a weird moment in which Brule and Kull see the ghost of a king murdered by snake people 1,000 years earlier. So they sort of have this vision of an ancient snake murder. His name is Ealal, and it's a kind of foreshadowing. The next day, the serpent priests disguise themselves as Kull's 17 counselors and lure him into a room where the ancient king Ealal had been murdered by serpent men 1,000 years earlier. But Kull had that vision, so he's like, oh, I know what's going on here. Kull and Brule managed to murder all of them because, and I didn't say this earlier, Brule is also pretty buff and good with a sword, but not as buff and good with a sword as Kull.
Mm-hmm.
So don't get confused there. But he does enter through windows, so I guess we knew he was buff anyway.
Of course.
And besides, the serpent men may be clever sorcerers, but they're pretty crappy warriors.
I feel like they would be. They're all wiggly and limp and
wiggly and
how can they hold up that sword or go through a window? You heard me. Wiggly and limp.
Damn.
Well, but I mean, there's a point there's a point to be made here about Howard's universe. These ultra masculine figures are the heroes, and the snake people are necessarily like, you don't want to be smart in Howard's universe. It's better to be buff and good with a sword than to be smart, because intelligence sort of like equates to craftiness, which is lies.
Why
you want to be
do both?
Well, we can. So here's it's like a Clint Eastwood, John Wayne kind of hero. It's a very remember, he wanted to write Westerns after he was done with all this sword and sorcery stuff. That's the universe. These very masculine men, albeit in the sword and sorcery genre, they have to be super buff because they don't have guns. So, wielding that broadsword. Anyhow, after they've murdered all the serpent men, they come to the real council chamber where they discover a duplicate Kull holding court with the actual counselors.
Wait.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
An elegant climax, in my opinion. I was picking on Howard a little bit, but I like this moment. The king is astounded and doubts his own identity because he's not very bright, but Brule shakes him out of it because now is not the time for an existential crisis.
Yeah.
He's like, wait, is that me? Who am I? Am I a serpent person?
God. Poor guy. Got all those muscles.
Valka's name, be not a fool. Can you yet be astounded after all we have seen? By now you should have been slain, and yon monster reigning in your stead, unknown by those who bowed to you. Leap and slay swiftly, or else we are undone. The Red Slayers, true men, stand close on each hand, and none but you can reach and slay him. Be swift!
Kull slays the false Kull, who reverts to his snake form in front of the counselors, and Ka Nu emerges because he's been hanging around somewhere. Remember that ambassador who had the jewel?
Oh,
just
yeah.
Watching everything. He's just been hanging out in the background, watching everything happen.
Why was he here?
Because he can't. Who's going to get involved in this craziness? He's not buff. He
He's
doesn't come through windows.
Why we introduced him? Has he done anything? Or...
He had the jewel.
He had the jewel, and he's like, hey, man, there's snake priests out there, and you got to watch out. I'm going to send my friend.
Oh, right.
And then
Right,
comes
right,
Brule,
right,
his
right,
buff
right,
friend.
right.
So his buff friend does all his dirty work for him. Kanu just hangs out in the back, like drinks wine, like sleeps with chicks and stuff.
Yeah.
So he's doing all that in the background while this is all happening, and then he like comes out of the shadows. And there he is, and he proceeds to explain to the astounded men of Valusia about the true plot of the serpent priests. Kull brings the counselors to see all the serpent men he and Brule had slain in the other chamber, and he drives his sword into the door, sealing it. Full of rotting
That's a
serpent
choice.
people.
Ew.
Let this room be doubly accursed, and let those rotting skeletons lie there forever as a sign of the dying might of the serpent. Here I swear that I shall hunt the serpent men from land to land, from sea to sea, giving no rest until all be slain, that good triumph and the power of hell be broken. This thing I swear, I, Kull, King of Valusia.
As I mentioned, it's a hallmark of Howard's work that the masculine, independent, forthright, unfancy, and honest leader wins in the end. Kull's brawn and Kanu and Brule's cunning outmatch the snake priest's sorcery. So I'm being a little disingenuous, I guess. I feel like Kanu's our people. You know what I mean? He's a smart guy. He's scheming around in the background. He's on the side of good. But he's not jumping through windows or anything, wielding a broadsword. That's more like us. He can do his reps in the gym. He can put up a few push-ups. He can do some sit-ups. But my man is not competing in Mr. Universe, you know?
Yeah, he's not doing all the parkour.
No, he's not a parkour guy. So, but Kull, the hero, is, this John Wayne kind of figure without the guns. Different kind of guns. The snake priests, who we'll soon see are a gloss of occult adepts, are the clear villains. Sneaky and conniving and dangerous with magic that deceives but does not control and conceals their physical weakness, their wiggliness, as Bree says. Later, Howard approaches Kull's universe from the snake priest's perspective in the less elegant but still enjoyable story of Delcartes' cat. So that's it for that story. We're going to do a different story by Howard that I think is going to get to really get into how Howard portrayed the occult. You got me? And it's called Delcartes' cat.
Ooh.
It starts with a talking cat. The talking cat, you guys are going to love this story, I think.
I feel like
the talking cat's name is Samaris. And Samaris claims to be 1,000 years old and has psychic powers to foretell future events and find stuff that you've lost.
That seems handy.
Yeah, it'd be a good cat to have, if you like cats. Despite the fact that the cat is always accompanied by a servant who wears a veil covering his face so that he could totally be just doing all the talking, Kull is amazed by the accuracy of the cat's statements. All right, you got me? So there is a cat, and the cat is talking, or seems to be talking. But there is, for some reason, this guy who's always with him, and you can't see his mouth.
Huh.
But Kull doesn't think, that's suspicious. He's like, that's an amazing cat.
Look at that cat. He's got his own servant.
What a cool cat. He's just like Garfield. Get this cat some lasagna. So when the cat tells him that his friend Brule has been dragged under the waters of the Forbidden Lake, remember Brule, window goer, very buff, by the great serpent. So far so good. The cat's like, hey, if you're amazed by me, let me tell you something that you ought to be concerned about. Your friend Brule, he got dragged under the water by the great serpent.
I thought Brule was too buff to be.
This serpent's
dragged.
pretty great.
Yeah. Is this a buff
Well, this
serpent?
is not a serpent man. This is an actual sea serpent.
Oh, it's an actual serpent.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Kull, he's going to go save his buddy, because he... Let me say this again. Brule, he, at a distance, has been dragged under the water. Can you picture this scenario? Kull is in his court, just like having a conversation with a cat.
Gosh.
And somewhere in some lake, which is not right next door, a man has been dragged under the water. But Kull says to himself, I can run to that lake and fish this man out, and he's going to be okay.
Yeah, he's buff.
He's buff. He can hold his breath for several hours.
How'd that work
Yeah.
for him?
Like Beowulf. After confronting and killing, this is a very nerdy joke, after confronting and killing a series of strange monsters, including a horned, four-armed shark creature. Let me say that one more time.
I'm sorry.
A horned, four-armed shark creature attacks him under the water.
Oh,
He's like Super Mario, because my man can hold his water. Hold his breath under the water.
My man can hold his water.
Hold his water. Kull, he carries that water for... Kull is carrying that water for society, for Valusian.
I don't know what that, anywhere.
Kull, he can hold his water.
But it's like camels.
Anyway, he arrives at a great underwater city. The lake people tell him they have existed in this city since before the time of humankind. They scold Kull for slaying his way into their midst and threatening them with the sword. Right? So he's just like, shark thing with all those arms. I'm going to kill that. What if he was just trying to make friends?
Been nice. Yeah, I could have just been like, more arms for hugging.
The lake, he's going to hug Kull.
Death and ruin follow the course of your race. Do we not know? No man has dared this lake for over 100 years. You come seeking treasure or to ravish and slay like all your bloody-handed kind?
It's pretty metal.
Pretty metal. As it turns out, the talking cat was wrong, and his best buddy Brule is not in the underwater city. Imagine that. The cat was wrong. After a brief attempt to kill Kull, the underwater king acknowledges that Kull is a true king, because he can't kill Kull, he's buff and holding his breath. And he's a true man, the truest of men, and decides to let Kull return to the surface on the back of a great behemoth. It unravels that the slave had been fooling Kull with a ventriloquist act. I know you're all surprised.
Wow, Rob, who would have known?
And the reason the reason the servant was doing this is so that his mistress could marry the man she wanted. So in other words, his mistress is Delcartes. The title of the story is Delcartes' cat.
Uh-huh.
And Delcartes really didn't want to marry this one guy. She wanted to marry this other guy, but her dad was like, you got to marry this guy over here. You know how that is. So she was like, wait a second, I have a talking cat who thinks otherwise.
That's a power move.
Okay. That's exactly how you should
As far as Delcartes is concerned, that was a smart choice.
It's probably what I would have done, not gonna lie.
And the cat was nevertheless, as it turns out, actually an ancient cat who'd lived for thousands of years, but just didn't talk.
Okay.
So the cat was magical all along. It was a 1,000-year-old cat.
I like this.
It's an ancient cat.
I like this story.
But it just couldn't talk.
So, you know what? You take what you
right.
can get, Rob.
Howard is so idiosyncratic, right? He's so, like, the details in his stories are, like, it's just wild. He's like, yeah, the cat was not magic cat. Oh, but it was magic. It was actually an ancient cat, but it didn't talk. So the ventriloquist slave had been momentarily replaced by an evil wizard who sent Kull off to die in the Forbidden Lake. So bizarre. So it was also
so complicated.
The slave who tried to get Delcartes out of being married didn't turn out to be the one who was fooling Kull. That was a different guy who replaced the slave. It's just unnecessarily wacky. In this episode, Howard. So here's the reason I told this story. It's one of the very few set of Kull stories. But in this episode, Howard sympathizes with the ancient races. Our author here. The lake people are wise and immortal, but they lack physical strength. And when they threaten to kill Kull, he tells them that though they may kill him eventually, he will kill many of them in the attempt. Kull is savage and simple in the shadow of these spiritually and intellectually superior lake people, with many arms and sharks. The ancient races, portrayed as manipulative and deceptive in the Shadow Kingdom, are wise and admirable in Delcartes' cat.
Okay, duality.
Yeah, so there's complexity here. The cat itself offers its own weird sort of commentary on the occult. Although there's a bunch of faking going on around the cat to fool the credulous king, Howard says the cat is actually 1,000 years old and kinda magic. In the Lake People and Samaris, the ancient cat, we have a vision of genuine magic as something ancient and venerable, but also often a tool of unscrupulous self-promoters in the modern world. Shamanism appropriated to sell skin cream, or mediumship to create reality TV. I think it's really an insightful commentary on occultism. There's magic out there, but we're faking so much around it that it's difficult to get to the truth.
No, yeah, it is cool.
Yeah.
Anyhow, let's talk about Atlantis.
I've been wondering where
Okay.
Atlantis was.
Yeah, so, I mean, the question now becomes, where did Howard get all this stuff? It's an interesting world. It's very influential. The Conan stories, the sword and sorcery genre, like, huge in Western culture. Kull's world and Conan's, to a large extent, are inspired by the works of course, Helena Blavatsky and one of her many acolytes, a guy we haven't talked about named William Scott Elliott. Elliott wrote a book called The Story of Atlantis, and we know that this was one of Robert Howard's sources when he was writing the Kull stories. So Scott Elliott's account of Atlantis identifies the Atlanteans as the fourth race in a succession of races outlined by Blavatsky, with our current race, which is better understood as a kind of long generation. We are the fifth race. There were 3 cataclysms during the Atlantean race, with the most recent one 80,000 years ago essentially wiping out the Atlanteans except for the residents of an island Plato called Poseidonus.
Poseidonus?
Poseidonus.
It's a rough name.
So Plato, of course, if we were doing an Atlantis episode, which we've talked about Atlantis in many different ways, but Plato believed that Atlantis was a real thing, and that Poseidonus was what it was called, and it was submerged in 9564 BCE, just about 10,000 years before Jesus. Scott Elliott goes to lengths marshalling evidence from science and history to prove the likelihood that Atlantis existed. There is, for example, an enormous ridge in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean that is only a few hundred or 100 fathoms deep. Here, presumably, was the continent of Atlantis. Similarities in wildlife and plant life, as well as human culture like mythology and religious rituals, including baptism, fasting, marriage, and embalming, prove the existence of some ancient root race that disseminated these things to the various continents of the world. So he's saying, isn't it interesting that the Egyptians do this, and the Mayans do this, and, there's this fire worship that's happening in the Hindus, and that's happening in I'm sort of throwing some of my own examples in here, but he's saying that the reason we all have these shared religious traditions across the world is because we all used to be from Atlantis. Got me?
Yeah.
Ancient writers give accounts of a lost continent in the middle of the ocean. Alien, Aelin, Alien, Proclus, Marcellus, and Diodorus Siculus all recount stories of a continent in the Atlantic. Marcellus mentions 7 islands whose inhabitants preserve the memory of the greater Atlantis that preceded them. Most famously, Plato makes multiple references to Atlantis in a series of works, namely the Timaeus, Critias, and Atlanticus. In Plato's view, the Atlanteans were warlike with rich and abundant lands. The Platonic concept of Atlantis seems to have been the source for Howard's Atlanteans, who were, remember, buff and barbaric, not, effete, occulty characters, sort of like Blavatsky seems to have imagined them. I think they were super tall in Blavatsky, too. Am I wrong about that?
I think probably. I feel like a lot of the races were really tall that she describes, right?
We're the short ones.
Yeah.
Many of the current races of the world began as sometime rulers of Atlantis before migrating to conquer other parts of the globe. One Gaul legend claims that the French tribes were descended in part from immigrants from Atlantis. Mexico's Toltecs and Aztecs claim to be descended from Aztlan, which from Scott Elliott's perspective sounds an awful lot like Atlantis. Aztlan? Atlantis?
It kind of.
You buy it? Bree, you buy it? Aztlan? Atlantis? All right, sort of. The Iowa and Dakota Indians believe that all of America's indigenous people at one time lived together on an island towards the sunrise. You've probably heard that the flood legends, which span the ancient cultures of the Americas, the Middle East, and India, all reflect the cataclysm that brought down Atlantis. These races migrated from Atlantis and began as one of the succession of 7 subraces ruling over Atlantis, guided by a Manu or spiritual teacher who would occasionally incarnate among them. The dark-skinned and 12-foot-tall Ramoahal is one race. The Tlavatli, the now South American Toltec race, who blended with the Mayans before the Mexica unified the tribes into the Aztec Empire. The first Turanian, the original Semite, the Akkadian, and the Mongolian. Those are your 7 descendant tribes from Atlantis. The procession of subraces began about 1 million years ago. The Toltecs were the height of Atlantean civilization, but also the start of its decline, since it's pretty much all downhill if you're the height. Although they had achieved great psychic and occult power, they turned it away from spiritual development and toward material wealth and the conquering of enemies. The spiritual guidance of the Manu was withdrawn and the continent fell into civil war. A steady struggle between the followers of the good law of the higher powers and the separate group of the black arts, the self-directed sorcerers. The battle between these groups persisted through the remainder of the Toltec period. Migrations from the British Isles in Egypt and the Americas began after that. Stonehenge was constructed by Atlantean emigrants, of course, with the simplicity of the ritual site serving as a protest to the elaborate nature of Atlantean temples. Maybe you guys remember from our Blavatsky series, Blavatsky's theory really was that, and it's not just Blavatsky, I mean, this is a Hermetic principle, it's an alchemical principle, that we are constantly involved in this process of spiritualization and materialization. So for her, the races hit a sort of height of occult, magical, psychic power, and then they're going to descend down into materiality, and then they're going to ascend back to spirituality, and we're toggling between those. Does that sound familiar?
Yep.
Not everyone was taught to read and write in Toltec Atlantis, FYI, only the children of superior abilities. And in addition to the arts, letters, and sciences, these children were instructed in the development of personal power. Scott Elliott references Bulwer Lytton's coming race here, saying that Bulwer Lytton has fairly accurately described the operation of Viril. How about that, Olivia?
Bringing it back.
On the east side of the continent was the city of the Golden Gates, the Rome of Atlantis. A canal system transported water from a nearby lake to support the population of 2 million. The elite of Atlantis rode in private airships. Of course they did. These airships were like yachts and could accommodate between 2 and 8 passengers. When they were appropriated for military use, battle airships could carry between 50 and 100 men. They were made of lightweight wood or metal and shaped like boats. They were propelled by mechanical means. Tubes stretching from a metal chest at the center of the vessel forced air toward the ground, driving the ship into the air. Complex system of tubes.
Like
Some steampunk vibes there. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Marriages tended to be monogamous, and women were treated as equals from infancy. They wrote on thin sheets of metal or porcelain.
What?
They didn't have paper, apparently. They had metal and porcelain.
Ew, oh my
That
god.
sounds like the most horrible sound must have happened every time they wrote all day long.
They ate the parts of the animal modern people discard, including the blood, and discarded the parts that modern people eat.
Like the awful
Muscles,
stuff?
I guess. Yeah, they ate the bones and the blood, and they threw out the
Did they eat the organs?
the flesh.
Well, we eat those, so I guess not.
Yeah, but not a lot of people eat that.
Yeah, they probably ate the organs, yeah. They ate fish in an advanced stage of decomposition,
Oh,
which
God.
modern people would find gross.
I can't imagine.
They had dairy, they had fruits, they had vegetables, they drank liquor. While much of Howard's concept of his fictional Hyboria owes a debt to Scott Elliott's theosophically inspired work, Atlantis, Lemuria, Cataclysms, Ancient Technology, Migration of Various Races, there are notably no snake priests in the whole of what Scott Elliott has to say. The conflict between self-oriented black sorcerers and followers of the good law suggests a plot that might involve something like snake priests, but there were no shapeshifters or reptilians to be found. On the subject of religion, Scott Elliott identifies a crew of adepts carrying the flame of secret knowledge through the ages, a theme of Blavatsky's Secret Doctrine. But in contrast to Howard's scheming snake priests, this group tends to steer clear of the halls of power and would have no interest in assassinating a king. Scott Elliott says that the first Manu, or spiritual teacher, manifested as a king in the first subrace of the Ramoa Halls. He came to be regarded as a god in time, and this led to the practice of ancestor worship. The Tlavatali were taught by adepts of the existence of a supreme being, whose symbol was the sun, and they built monoliths to this god. Under the Toltecs, the adepts established a secret occult fraternity who understood the mysteries of the universe, but this was kept separate from the popular religion, which continued to worship God through the symbol of the sun disk. No other image was permitted. This image eventually reverted to the image of a man, but this human symbol was eventually replaced by the Atlanteans' belief that they were their own gods and could create their own codes and laws for themselves. Sort of, human society is almost reaching that point again, isn't it? Animal totems joined this self-worship as objects of human blood sacrifice. In his tract on the Lemurians, so we're not done with Scott Elliott, he's did both Atlantis and Lemuria. Scott Elliott, talking about the Lemurians, identifies the birth of a secret lodge, but again, no snake men. The Lemurian man lived among the reptiles and pine forests, but these reptiles were dinosaurs, not snake priests. Science bears this out, of course.
Checks out.
Yep.
Checks out, yes.
Got
Humans and dinosaurs. I remember that from the 2nd grade.
Nailed it.
Land of the Lost. Beings from Venus incarnated on Earth in order to serve as teachers for the Lemurians and to found the root race of the Atlanteans. These beings formed a secret lodge of initiation to work through the spiritual ennoblement of humankind. Real nice of them. We really need to turn to Blavatsky's Secret Doctrine, which is the inspiration for Scott Elliott's works to make the full connections to the Snake Men. Speaking on the 4th root race, Blavatsky says, "Some of the descendants of the primitive Nagas, the serpents of wisdom, peopled America when its continent arose during the palmy days of the great Atlantis." This sounds much more like Howard's concept of the snake people as an original and ancient race, but the serpents are incarnated angels whose purpose is the spiritual ennoblement of humankind, not their manipulation, and they aren't literally serpents. Blavatsky opens the door for misinterpretation when she argues that the serpent in the Garden of Eden and the fallen angel Lucifer were serpents of wisdom. As I've argued before, Blavatsky meant to reinterpret Judeo-Christian tradition such that the serpent encouraged spiritual enlightenment and elevating the self beyond material needs and concerns. But Robert E. Howard seems to have confused these beneficent serpents of wisdom with the selfish black magicians who sought to deceive humanity and bring it down, layering them on top of each other. This same mistake would carry forward from Howard's short story into the now infamous work of David Icke. But we'll save that for another time. Here, on Occult Confessions. Ladies, thoughts on the snake priests of Atlantis?
Shit was wild.
That was a lot. But I really did enjoy the stories. I thought they were really cool. Very dramatic.
Honestly, for the time, too, that he was writing it, I'm, pretty, impressed by how, mentally, twisty-turny it was.
Yeah.
You know?
I think Howard is underrated in a way. I would recommend reading these stories if you were interested in this episode. I don't think you would be disappointed to go back and read them. They're fun. They're fun reads and not too challenging, and the twists and turns are a good time.
I love the dumb, pointless attention to details. Oh no, the cat didn't actually talk, but it's magical. It's ancient. like weird things like that. It just seems to be a constant theme based off of what we heard. It's just little attentions to detail that don't actually they're not that important, but it's fun and funny, I think.
Yeah, and it makes an interesting point about the culture. Howard is an interesting writer. He's an interesting guy. Not the only person in Lovecraft's circle to commit suicide, and Lovecraft himself was quite disturbed. A really interesting group of people, honestly, as writers. Speaking of which, we've got the David Icke connection at the end there. Isn't it interesting that the reptilian conspiracy theory gets its start in these fictional stories?
Yeah.
And it's a misreading of Blavatsky.
Right. Well, yeah. You and I have talked a lot about how Icke overall is just a misreading, kind of Blavatsky. And a lot of other people, but... I guess misreading is debatable, but I'm saying misreading.
What else would you call it?
No, I would call it a misreading.
Oh, okay. Oh, you mean some people might say he's not misreading, he's reading between the lines or something.
Yeah, or,
Or he's just reading Robert E. Howard.
Yeah, now I'm kind of interested to see, just how many details, because I can't really remember like exactly what Ike had to say about Atlantis, to be totally honest with you, but
It's conceivable that he read Robert E. Howard, but it's highly likely that he saw the Arnold Schwarzenegger Conan the Barbarian in 1982, which included James Earl Jones playing essentially the Snake Priest character from these stories. Even though they're not in the Conan stories, they were all mashed together. So the Snake Priest theme was brought into popular consciousness beyond just the Howard stories. I mean, these are kind of deep cuts. That's the fun, I guess, of these episodes, that we tell people about stories that they probably haven't read. But anyhow.
This would make a great video game. Like if someone interpreted this.
Definitely.
Like that's such a big thing now. I feel like people do, but
I'm picturing this
crazy
as like
game.
a really good like side scroller.
I volunteered to be your researcher. If anyone out there wants to design the Robert E. Howard Kull Warrior King. Yeah, Jacob maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, we just made Jacob's
Start
career
that
future
GoFundMe
for him.
page.
Yep.
Yeah, honestly.
Hey guys, this is Brandon, the Silver-Tongued Shadow.
Hey, this is Johnny Cook. Rob asked us to recollect a special moment that we can remember from kind of the behind the scenes of the podcast. And it got me thinking to when I kind of first started getting involved.
I remember when Rob told me that he wanted to start a podcast, and he asked me to sort of help with the discussion and the particularly the voice acting side of this show.
And I was enrolled in Rob's theater class at the time, like the history of theater, because at the time I had done like no acting because I had like the worst stage fright. But a friend of mine told me about a podcast that Rob had started doing, and at this point I think it was the end of season 1, because I think the first time I did any sort of recording was at the recording was the Marie Laveau episode. But the first time I actually remember like the bits we did was when Brandon, Shannon, Savannah, Ray, and Lucy and I did the Cannonball bit for the Quantum Consciousness episode.
Hey, this is Daniel. Favorite moment of the podcast? Probably Chinese secret societies, because I got to brandish a wooden sword and smack Sam Steen with it. And that probably by default tops everything else. Either that or playing Charles Manson.
Everything got shut down, and due to COVID. And all of us here are traditionally stage actors and stage performers. So not being able to perform has been a little hard for me. It's been more than a year and a half since our last stage show, and I am so itching to get back on stage. But I've also been very thankful for the opportunities to continue voicing these characters and these roles for Rob, and you guys listening.
And I was kind of scared. Didn't really know what I was getting into because I'd never even done skits. But I just remember feeling so comfortable around them and in that environment. And I just remember laughing to myself because everyone was so funny and the chemistry was great. And it was so engaging. It got me completely hooked. And I really don't think I would be where I am today if I didn't get involved with the podcast. So, great memories.
I think one of my favorite moments from the podcast, besides being able to do this with all of my bestest friends and just like hang out and chat and have fun, was one day when we were trying to record an episode. No matter where we tried to record, just something was going wrong. We were in a classroom, and I think about halfway through recording, the fans just kicked on, and they were so loud, and it just kept messing with everything. So we tried to find another spot. We ended up in like a conference room, but the equipment wasn't working in there. We went into the costume closet, but the sound just wasn't right. And then we even like tried going into the attic of the building, which I tell you what, that place is horrifying. It looks like a scene out of a horror movie, and I think to this day I'm still somewhat like scarred by it.
Hi everyone, it's Luke. I think my fondest memory has been like getting to work with the alchemical actors in Occult Confessions. I came in when they started Dunwich, and I got the chance to edit that, and it was just so exciting because it was before I had met everyone, and so I could hear all these unique voices in different ways than they had been used throughout the podcast before, and it was just exciting for me. So that's probably one of my favorite experiences working with Occult Confessions so far, and I'm looking forward to all the opportunities to keep working with them in the future.
But we finally like managed to find a spot to record, and we got through it, and everyone was like a little bit tense at first, but after we got done recording, everyone just kind of like sat back and laughed for a little bit because it was just ridiculous. But it was worth it, and it was a fun little adventure trying to record.
All right, Olivia, bring us on home.
I hereby adjourn and declare closed this meeting of the Secret Order of Alchemical Actors until such time as we get together and do it again.
Required the full talents of the voice boys to pull this episode off today. Sean Priest and Brandon Walls, Andrew Mims, and Luke Kinnaman. I am joined this day by Bree Littoral, our metallurgic prophet.
Bye, guys.
And Olivia Littoral, Grandmaster.
Goodbye.
My name is Rob C. Thompson. I am the Supreme Hierophant of your Secret Order of Alchemical Actors. And I will catch you next time as we proceed down this dark journey through reptilians and necronomicons and sundry other monsters that rise from the depths of the imagination here on Occult Confessions.
That was pretty metal, Rob.